I'm gonna do that after. 2, 1, start.
Good evening. I would like to call this meeting, the October 10th meeting of the Jacksonville Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, to order. May I have an adoption of tonight's agenda?
Make a motion, we adopt the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. So we are up to our minutes. So hopefully some of you have had a chance to read through the August 8th minutes. Can I have a motion
I
to
make a
adopt?
motion to adopt the previous August 8th minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Jill Puff. Does
Okay.
anybody have any comments, questions, concerns about that discussion? Okay, in that case, can I hear all those in favor?
Aye.
Jim, I take it you're in favor also?
What are we doing?
Are you in favor of that motion?
Oh, yes.
Okay, we're unanimous
I
on
was
that
looking
then
at the
also.
CIP down there.
Speaking of which, we are up to the CIP. So, Mr. Andrew, your turn.
How's it going? Wally's gonna lead this off.
I'll just
Okay.
start with the introduction. We'll turn it over to Andrew. He and Talia are our resident project experts, so I'll let them dazzle you with all the projects. But just as a quick reminder, we're doing this because, you know, every year we go through the capital improvement plan adoption, and that really begins in October. And part of what that begins with is a discussion of what we're currently working on. And then from there, we typically go through an open internal call for projects for departments to submit their projects for review, and then programming and planning for the upcoming CIP. We have had some internal discussions about possibly adjusting that process, so we may be back before you talking about what those adjustments might be. But for tonight, what we're going to do is kick off as we normally would. Just as a quick reminder, our capital improvement plan is a 10-year planning document. The purpose, especially as it relates to water and sewer, is to plan those projects that we will need in the next 10 years. And that way we can go through what we think our project cost estimates would be. We can show what funding sources we could utilize. In this case, it's typically either the water and sewer fund or fund balance, as we have money saved up to handle these projects, or it could be debt. And if you recall, we've done revenue bonds in the past to secure large projects, and we've also gone and used public water supply funds, which is low interest loans. And then periodically there's a grant available or so, but we're so large that we typically don't qualify for grants. But those are typically our funding options. And then we look at the projects, we evaluate them, prioritize them. We typically bring them to this group for you to consider them and make recommendations on those. And then we get them scheduled in our CIP. So tonight, we're going to talk to you about the projects that are ongoing in our capital improvement plan. Just as a quick reminder, a capital improvement plan project is a project that typically takes longer than 12 months to execute. There's some sort of design requirement, typical upfront, you know, engineering, permitting, sometimes easements, right-of-ways that we have to acquire, and then there's actual construction timeline. The projects have a greater than 5-year useful life, and they typically exceed $50,000, which, as you're well aware, in the water and sewer industry, that's pretty much about everything. I mean, we've installed valves that cost that much. So just a quick rundown on what the capital improvement plan is and what qualifies to be a capital improvement plan project. So for this, Andrew's going to go through the projects that our engineering team is currently working on. Some of those are in construction, some of those are in design, and some of those are really at the end of design getting ready to go out for bid so that we can get them under construction. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Thank you, Wally. and appreciate y'all having me here tonight. So these are just the water and sewer projects that we currently have, ongoing at this time in our CIP. One of the projects I believe everybody here is well aware of is our Henderson Drive Infrastructure Improvements Project. This project was to replace utilities beneath Henderson Drive before the road is to be resurfaced by NCDOT. It's gone on for quite some time now. Thankfully to say we are in the short roads and we should be completing this project in the next 2 weeks. They have some very minor punch list things that they still need to do. We still have a few manholes that we're having some troubles with, but all in all, the project's coming to a close. And we anticipate NCDOT coming out in the next year to 2 years, depending on their schedule, to resurface the roadway.
A minimum of 6 months.
Yes. So one of the projects that we're about to go out for construction is our ongoing inflow and infiltration rehabilitation project. We've gone through and we have identified several areas within the city that are in need of some work for our sanitary sewer system. This project is going to reduce the amount of I&I coming into our collection system. By the best means that we have found to reduce that amount of I&I is by cured in place pipelining, where we go in and we basically insert a pipe within a pipe. There's no excavation involved in this process, and it's quick, it's fast, and we get the end product that we're looking for, which is a reduced amount of I&I.
It doesn't take out too much volume
No, ma'am.
capacity?
It doesn't. It does take a little bit, but for the most part, as you can see in the picture, where the diameter of the pipe that we're losing, which is minimal, we're talking a ½ inch at the most in most cases, but we're picking that up and less friction in the pipe. So you're not stopping any solids.
What's the lifespan on that cure in place?
Right now, we're being given a 50-year lifespan
Wow, okay.
on the new cured in place.
Were there you have multiple areas in the city. What particular areas were the worst? I guess you could say.
So we have, so one thing that we've found with our I&I projects is we will start in one area, and by the time we are even halfway through design, our lines maintenance has come to find us and say, hey, we have problems here, there, and everywhere. So we are literally all over city limits right now. We are concentrating in the Triangle subdivision area, Triangle Plaza, I believe it's called. But we also have areas in Northwoods and along Western Boulevard.
areas of the city?
Yes, that's right.
And in the Triangle, if you remember, there used to be a mobile home park behind
It's all gone.
the actual shopping center, and the owners of that property have moved all those mobile homes out. Well, all those existing lines are there. And while all of them are not ours, a portion of them are. And that is a key area to find I&I. So that is one of the places that we will be focusing. You asked the question about the pipe. Derek went and got one of the samples. That's actually a cutout of one of our pipes that have been lined. And you can see that the blue is the original pipe, and then the white is the liner that they install and then cure. So it's literally a pipe within a pipe.
Looks green to me.
Sorry.
Green, so
Blue green.
Well, that's fairly thick.
It's
And
very
it adds structure to the pipe.
I bet.
We're looking at sending this project out for bid here the next probably 30 days, and we'll be starting construction on this in the early part of next calendar year.
okay.
Thanks. So will the bid be for like a certain number of feet, or you don't just say it's not an open-ended thing, or is it per foot kind of thing?
It will be a per foot bid,
Okay.
so that does give us the flexibility to basically pay the contractor for what they actually install and get a better price.
We give them an estimate of how many feet we think, how many manholes,
If you
those
run
kind of
into other
things.
stuff, that's
But
able to be done.
that's right. And then we pay on actual quantities.
Okay. What are they doing at Western and Gum Branch right now, by the way?
They're installing signal poles. You're talking about the auger that they've had out there?
No, Western and Gum Branch, right there, like in front of Lowe's, is all torn up in cones and stuff
Yes,
again?
they're adding turn lanes and been adjusting
Is
the
that DOT
intersection.
doing that?
It is.
Okay, all right, I didn't know, I didn't see any city trucks, that's what I was
But
wondering.
there's lately there's been a big auger, and my kids think is the coolest thing ever. But it's about 24 inches in diameter. And what they're doing is putting in the concrete bases for the pedestal, the arms.
Gotcha. Okay.
Another project we have in design now that we are anticipating starting construction soon is our Newbridge Street infrastructure and streetscape project. This project is going to install a new water line along Newbridge Street from Warlick Street to just, I wanna say the gas station, going towards Stratford. So basically the Freedom Fountain area. And we're also doing a lot of stormwater remediation in this area. We did a study during design and we found that all of our stormwater pipes in this area are woefully undersized. So this project will be improving that system. And then once we put in the new water and storm sewer pipes, we'll be coming back with a new streetscape design, which will have new sidewalks and new landscape medians along the roadway.
That median's gonna take out a lane, isn't it?
The roadway will be reduced from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. One thing that the new lanes will have is the existing lanes are currently only 12 feet wide. And the one lane that'll be used for travel will be 16 feet wide. So it'll allow for us about a 4-foot buffer for cars to actually back up into traffic and be able to maneuver through it, make a more safe movement before getting into traffic. It'll give them that little bit of cushion to see who's coming around the car.
Isn't there supposed to be areas where like delivery trucks can also stop in the median so they're not blocking that street? I use this street a lot, that's why I'm asking.
Right here.
Yeah.
So if you look in between the landscaping, there's a striped area. And the UPS truck, who's infamous for parking in one of the lanes, will be able to pull in there and make deliveries and then.
Is there gonna be like a sign or something to advise those drivers? How do they know that? Go ahead.
So we're back and forth on that right now. We're at 90% design, so we're looking at whether it's just gonna be simply pavement markings that indicate that, or if we are gonna actually have vertical signs
Signed.
to show that it is a delivery.
Yeah, cause I do use that street a lot and they're terrible for that.
They are.
Yeah.
And the other thing that'll allow is we're gonna keep the angled parking. So if there's, if parking spots open here, somebody can actually come in and make the turn to get back into that angled spot
All right,
versus going all the way down to an intersection and trying to make a turn there.
okay.
So we anticipate getting those plans soon and the final plans, and we're looking at starting construction on this project in the spring of 2020. So that's where we're at here. I take that back, on phase 1, which is from Warlick Street to Hurst Street, not the entire roadway.
And this is one of the areas where we continually have water leaks. I think every time we fix one, a new one pops up.
Well, it's an older section too.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's brittle pipe.
Another project that we have is our vehicle wash facility. This project is located at our Public Services Fleet building. We have a wash facility there that is used to wash all of the city vehicles and equipment, which I'm not sure what that exact number is. I just know it's a lot.
Give or take.
So we have one wash bay that takes in all of these vehicles every week. It is in constant motion. And as you can see in the picture, we have backup problems with our drainage. The project was designed to basically eliminate this drainage problem. We've done everything that we could up until this point to remediate it, but our new project will reroute a drainage line, put in a larger grease trap to catch the solids, and it's a very minor project, but we anticipate starting construction on this in the next few months.
One of the challenges with this project now, you may say, well, why is this a water and sewer project?
Yeah.
But literally, before they wash a vehicle, Ricky has to go over there with the vac truck and vac out everything. And then after they wash it, come back then or before they wash the next one. Because of the size of the intake and the size of the oil water separator. And
They just never thought it was gonna be used this much?
I think it was just under designed from the beginning, and
Gotcha.
as our fleet's gotten larger and more demanding, we continually have problems, and we've actually flooded out fleet a time or two. So this is a operational issue for water and sewer where it takes one of our people off of his regular route to go over there and help out several times a week.
Our Parkwood Regional Pump Station and Western Trunk Sewer is a large project that we are basically taking the entire northwest corridor of Jacksonville, city limits of Jacksonville, and sending that portion of sewer out to Landap. We've been in discussions with this project several times, and our plans have been finalized on this project, and we are in the final phases of permitting. We anticipate getting our last permit within the next 30 days. And we'll be going out for bids on phase 1 of this project here in the next probably month to 2 months. And phase 1 of this project is the trunk sewer that's going to be installed from Western Boulevard along Williamsburg Parkway to Fawn Trail. This is a large diameter trunk sewer, and we are looking at starting construction on this probably the spring of next year, the way our scheduling is showing everything going right now. This is gonna be a very intense project. It's large diameter pipe, we're gonna be road closures, we'll be talking about this
People are
project
gonna
more
love
to
you
come.
even more.
Yes. And part of what drives this is we have a lot of interest in the Cypress Creek track. It was the Vineyards at one point, Cypress Creek. I think it's Vineyards now, actually.
Where's that?
It's 380 acres. Excuse me, but they're looking at over 500 single-family homes. So while we can handle the first few phases of that project, in order to meet build out, we're going to have to make some system improvements. So this is kind of the first step to that. So and again, it's all about timing. We're trying to time it with that project. We don't want to be too far ahead or too far behind.
So this is phase 1, how many phases are there?
Right now, we're showing, I believe it's 4 phases. We're trying to do the trunk sewer, this portion of trunk sewer will be 1 phase. The connecting trunk sewer to the pump station will be another, and then the pump station will be its own. And the force main out to Landap will be divided into 2.
It has to get it across the river.
Correct. The Decatur lift station elimination project. This is a project to completely eliminate the Decatur lift station with a new gravity trunk sewer. The gravity trunk sewer will, it's gonna be about 1,500 linear feet, if I remember right, of new gravity pipe. One of the major benefits of this is reducing the O&M cost on that lift station. We have problems with the lift station already for various reasons. So when the discussions came up with staff to what to do here, we looked at repairing the lift station, and also, the option came in to completely eliminate it, which doesn't happen often. We're currently doing some flow monitoring in the area that's gonna last about another 2 months, 2 to 3 months. And once we have that data back, we can go forward and continue our design as far as what diameter sewer we need in that area, and also doing some additional modeling. We're anticipating completing design next calendar year, and then hopefully also starting construction next calendar year as well.
And if you'll remember, this is one of those pump stations that when Pete Deaver was here, he was always concerned about, because it's a shallow wet well. The pumps have to be primed, so they're not submersible pumps. And it sits literally next to the creek. So there's almost no response time. So this will be a major benefit if we can eliminate the pump station and just simply go to gravity sewer.
Our Ellis lift station upgrades, this project has kind of divided into 2 separate projects. Our immediate concern with this pump station now is to correct the damages that were done during Hurricane Florence. The picture you see here is, the remnants of Hurricane Florence, what it did to the station. So our immediate efforts right now is just to do what we can to get this keep the pump station basically operational at this time, which it is. But we're doing the short-term fixes, and we're also evaluating a long-term solution for this pump station, which is including possibly relocating the station or other various opportunities for, I'd hate to say, for lack of better terms, flood-proofing the station. We're going through several options right now, and we have a consulting firm that's helping us out with the design and modeling for the long-term solution. And we're also looking at various funding opportunities here due to the hurricane impacts and the flooding problems in the area. So we're looking at completing design and possibly starting construction in 2020 on this project.
This is one that our utilities maintenance crew has done a great job of keeping it limping along, because as you can see, it was flooded. I think it's important to note that the station actually sits 4 feet above ground, and it was 2 to 3 feet in the building. The picture you see there is 2 or 3 feet in the building. We had controls that were damaged. It completely flooded a bypass pump that we had there. It completely flooded our generator, which is also elevated, and it flooded our biofilter that handles the air quality, which is also elevated. So
You can't raise this much more, can you?
we can't raise that station at all. We could elevate. There's some thoughts that we could harden the structure so that you basically flood proof the structure so nothing gets in. But the problem is if it floods, we can't do anything with it. So it's not a great solution. Actually, about where this picture is taken, it does not flood. And we own that piece of property. It's right up against Ellis Boulevard. There is some question of whether we can possibly relocate the station. Of course, as you can imagine, there's a lot of flow coming to this station, over 1 million gallons a day. And it comes in through 3 different directions. So we would have to figure out how to coordinate all of that and pipe it further. But there is that opportunity. And one of the things that Andrew mentioned is we actually found a economic development grant, because this station serves the industrial area off of Center Street. And that economic development grant is there for resiliency of infrastructure that supports economic development. And we've been working with the Economic Development Commission in Jacksonville and Onslow County to get support for this, and we have their support, and they're helping with filling out some of the applications and those kind of things, some of the, the number of jobs and things that we have to submit. So it's likely the long-term solution to this could be partially funded through grant funds, but in the meantime, we still have to make the repairs from Hurricane Florence. So it's kind of a 2-part project. And unfortunately, part of the challenge in dealing with FEMA is it's not something that we can just go do, even though it's, that's why it's taking so long, because we have to jump through certain hoops to even be eligible for FEMA funding to make the repairs. And as you can imagine, it's not a cheap repair.
This is catastrophic from last year, but in a normal heavy rainfall, access is difficult to
That's
that
right.
station.
You're correct.
Yeah.
In a normal rainfall, it floods to the point where we can't get to it. We've talked a couple of times about installing a boardwalk. We actually had a boat that got reappropriated. Somebody decided they needed it more than we did. We've looked at possibly creating, an earthen dike around the station to keep the area from flooding, but that wouldn't have solved this. It would have come right over that and it would have all flooded. And then we would have to pump it out.
Even
and
if
get
the
it out.
site's protected, you can't get to it.
That's right.
Yes.
So that's part of the challenge. If we,
Unless you can get your boat
if
back.
we have to leave it there, if we flood-proof the doors, flood-proof the building, we even talked about whether you could come in through the roof in an emergency situation. But then the problem is it becomes a confined space and there's OSHA requirements for that. So it's just a difficult situation.
Our Nano plant tank chemical based repair work, it's a long name for this project, is we are basically trying to remediate the areas around the sulfuric acid tanks. Over the years, the Nano plant is 10 years old, is older than 10 years. So the chemicals in those tanks have actually eaten away around at the concrete that are supporting the tanks and around it. So we've done a project now that we're hopefully going to be re-advertising shortly to correct the situation at these tanks. This project was once bid before and it came back well over our engineer's estimate. So we had to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out a few alternate ideas in order to get this back within budget. The water plant maintenance bridge, the trains that you see here in the image are located within our water plant, and our staff quite often are required to get to the tops of these trains. In the way that the station, or the water plant, I apologize for station, is situated, it's not exactly the most practical means in order to get to the top. So the maintenance bridge was an opportunity for us to get access to the tops of those trains and also have a way to repair the fans that are suspending over tops of these trains too, because access is just at a minimum. Through the design and preliminary studies of the water plant, we found that the most practical means is going to be to actually probably purchase a piece of equipment, a lift, so to say, in order to get access to the tops of these trains. The problem being is that the grading that was installed inside the water plant doesn't support the weight of that equipment now. So now our project has shifted to an equipment purchase and improving the strength of those grades.
How do you get to the top now?
We don't.
There's no way to do it.
There's no way to do it. There's no way to.
And the problem is there's a lot of plastic piping up there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like you can use a ladder and then support yourself across it. You literally have to, we've even talked about suspending something from the beams to possibly work.
Those fans and
challenge.
blades alone weigh about 300 pounds each, and those big fans up there, they're broken. So there's just no way to get to them and get them down.
The good thing is the front grading that you see here is heavy duty. The problem is, and I know that you've all been there and been to the plant, the grate that's in the back is not. So we can get it in, but the trains are so close together you can't really work from between them. So you have to come around, but once you come around, that grading is not load rated sufficient to handle the lifts and those kind of things. And they've been creative. They've tried multiple things. They've tried sticking one of those fork trucks in through the doors and extending the arm up and trying to reach in that way. And we do have a one-man lift that we've used a couple of times, but it doesn't go high enough. And again, weight can be a problem there. So it's
No catwalks across the middle or anything?
well, we actually talked about catwalks and they're expensive and they have to be designed.
Like scaffolding.
We've actually looked at scaffolding. That might be the only other option, but the problem is when you set it up, you gotta take it down.
Sure,
So
every
it's
time you use
not, yes, so it's very time consuming.
Mhm.
It's not,
Well, the
and
fans are, you can't get to scaffolding, you can't get to them.
we can't get to the fans, but we can get to the top of the trains.
They don't have any kind of industrial equipment that's lighter like they use in warehouses, or is that what it won't support?
That's what it won't support. That's what Talia actually did a lot of research on that, and while I don't think the weight so far, problem is it's gotta have a narrow footprint,
Right.
and the more narrow the footprint, the more
dense
weight.
the weight, sure.
That's right.
The ability to reach across those trains, so it's kind of a balance between the weight and the length that it can actually span.
I'm looking at ropes and a Tarzan type thing going across the top.
We-
Yeah.
We jokingly said we could do
Yeah, there you go.
we could do a ropes course inside and
Yeah,
hand the
there you
people
go.
wrenches as they go.
Yeah. Wow.
ropes course, Cirque du Soleil, you know, anything
Yep.
along those lines.
There you go. So it's coming along.
Hanging bridge off of those girders up above.
And we actually talked about something like that. But that's where the engineer and fairly expensive design, we looked at hanging,
Plus the OSHA stuff.
yes,
Oh,
we
yeah.
looked at hanging and then we looked at floor supported. Floor support is cheaper, but it's still a challenge.
So I think I'm gonna turn this back over to Wally, because the Black Creek well replacement project has kind of absorbed several other projects over time, so Wally?
I know we've talked about this a couple of times. Talia and I came and talked to you about taking two projects and combining them. The original project, if you remember, was wells 2 and 5, 2 and 5, 2 and 4. 2, 3, and 4. And actually going in, those buildings were constructed in the 60s. The electrical equipment in there is giving our maintenance staff a lot of problems. So we needed to do some building rehab, some electrical equipment. So we had a project to do that. Well, as we were doing that, Talia basically looked at the project and said, you know, I think we might, if before we spend all this money, I think we might want to see what those wells look like. So as part of the project, we had somebody come in, actually pull the wells, run a camera down them, and evaluate them. And I think you remember us discussing that one of them actually looked kind of like Swiss cheese. So what we found is they were not viable candidates for rehabbing the well itself, which then begs the question, why put money into a building when you don't know how long that well is going to last? So trying to decide what we would do, we came up with the idea that we had well 1 that we had not operated in some time. And the reason was because of head pressure in the system and that well not being able to overcome some of that head pressure. So we had kind of scavenged parts off of it as maintenance staff tend to do, because we're not utilizing it. We need it in a hurry, so we'll go take it from here and move it over here. So we actually pulled the well and had it cameraed much like the others, and it's actually in really good shape, which is a good thing. So we've adjusted the project to come back, rehab well 1. So we're gonna rehab the well itself. New pumps, new controls. We might have to do something with the piping. We're not sure what was causing the head pressure problem, but literally when we turned on well 6 or 7, it would reduce the flow from well 1 so much that it would just shut it down. So we've got to overcome some of those challenges, but the great thing is we do have a viable candidate, and they're thinking that well 1 will be somewhere in the 400 to 500 gallons a minute range, which is where we want to be. So that is great news for well 1. So that leaves, what do we do with 2 through 5? And we've had a lot of internal conversations, and kind of where we're headed toward is a study to look at whether we can drill 1 or 2 new wells at one of those existing locations and just abandon the others. So the thought is maybe we can install 1 or 2 wells to where we get the same capacity that we originally had from wells 1 through 5.
Would the new wells go into the Black Creek?
The new wells would be into the Black Creek. And of course, that doesn't adjust our permitted amount. We're still only permitted to withdraw 750,000 gallons a day. So it doesn't adjust our permitted amount. What it does do is allow us to pull it from different locations, which is actually better for the aquifer. And then again, the state would like this because we would be going from 5 wells all along one street, which for sustainability purposes is probably not the best way to do things, to 1 to 2, maybe 3 at the most. But again, there's sufficient spacing there to have all 5, but with today's practices, we try to spread those out more. It's kind of, if you're drawing from multiple points, it's more even than if you're drawing from one point where you end up with a larger cone. So that's kind of where we stand with the Black Creek project. Obviously, before we move forward with 2, 3, 4, and 5, we'll have to do quite a bit of testing. What that would probably look like is we would come in and do a pilot hole and a test well, which is typically what we're doing to see if, a site's even viable for a new well, just to see what, we know that the water quality is going to be great, but what's the quantity? What can we actually get out of that well? So those are some of the things that we'll be looking at. The other thing I will say is one of the major factors that goes into the capacity use area is the state has off the screen has a monitoring well in this area. And if I remember correctly, it's in the Cape Fear aquifer, which is below the Black Creek. And one of the things that well shows is that there's some sort of cone of depression there, which doesn't make sense because it doesn't match the monitoring well data that we have in the Cape Fear, as a crow flies 3-4 miles away. So there's some question there of, can we use one of these wells as a monitoring well for the state? Obviously that takes redrilling and some modifications, but the question is, can we convert one of these sites into a new monitoring well from the state? Dr. Sproul is pretty convinced, based off the information that we have, that maybe there's a construction issue with that well. And if we have another monitoring well to replace it, then we can either verify that there's in fact a cone there, or we can verify that it is construction of that well. So more to come on that, but that's where that project stands currently. I see this as this is a marathon, not a sprint. So
Are any of those currently in use?
we are not using 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, because if you remember, the truck ran through our chlorine building on 258, which was how we feed chlorine to these wells. Yes. So, and that is part of the project. When we rehab well 1, we will have to include a chlorine station or a chlorine feed at well 1.
Further
Which
back
is-
from the road?
Yes.
Yes, further back from the road. And that's what we do at wells 6 and 7. They both have their own chlorine feed, which means it's another place for us to monitor and worry about, but it's probably the best solution.
Do we have any more Black Creek wells than these 5?
We do. We have these 5, which are all located right in the Wells Road area off 258. And then we have wells 6 and 7, which are closer to Catherine Lake Road. And then we have on the Gum Branch side of the New River, near Rock Creek, we have wells 11 through 18. And those are in pretty good shape. We're providing some information from the state, and we pulled well 16?
18, 16, 6,
Which one was the problem? 16?
16.
We pulled well 16, and the well was in good shape, but the column pipe was not. So we're replacing the column pipe. That was an unexpected operational expense in Joe's budget, but
How
It
much
was
you
good
be
that we
pulling
found
out
it.
of Black Creek?
right now,
Yeah.
roughly
It's, it's,
$1 million.
yes, sir, it's right about $1 million, Wally.
Right about $1 million. We're permitted for an average of $750,000 per day over the course of the year. But we also have a bank. And we are also still working to regain some of our capacity.
Everything else is coming out of Castle Hayne.
Everything else is coming out of the Castle Hayne.
And the PD.
Except for we have 2 lonely wells in the PD that they don't make up for a lot, but they give us something, about 200 gallons a minute each.
They're both about 200 gallons a minute, and it's just as good a water as the Black Creek, actually.
It's just not a large aquifer, so you don't hear much about it. I typically lump it in with the Black Creek wells.
Thank you.
All right, and then the last project is really more of a study. We've talked about this several times, taking the Bryn Mawr pump station and redirecting it to the base. We implemented a study to look at the feasibility, the cost, both construction and operational, and then look at different alternatives. We looked at a total of 5 routes of how we could get it there. And what I'll tell you is that the estimated cost of all 5 routes was above what we had put in the CIP originally. And several of those routes called to question whether the project would even be viable at this point. The costs range from on the order of just over $5 million all the way up to $12 million, depending on which route you go. The $5 million route, or just over $5 million route, sounds logical, but when you look at it, it actually relays it through some existing pump stations, which all have to be upgraded in order to do it, which is included in the cost. But then when you look at the cost of what those stations will be sized for in the future, the ongoing operation, electrical costs, that cost is significantly higher than just a force main to run it straight to the base, which is the higher cost. So it's one of those where you pay now or pay later. Pay now or pay forever.
Could you explain to people why you want to run it to the base?
One of the reasons we're looking at this is we would be able to redirect 1.1 million gallons, or essentially 1/5 of our system, to the base. That would be a large benefit for the base because it'll help them with their treatment plant. They actually need residential wastewater to help in managing their plant. But for us, that would, extend the life of LTS. It would help us during periods of inclement weather. It gives us more storage. The question is, at some point, we probably will need to look at this. The question is, again, comes back to timing. That's a large sum of money to redirect. However, not too long ago, we did an expansion of 3 million gallons at our wastewater plant, and that was roughly $48 million. Well, if you divide 48 by 3, somewhere between 5 and 12 for $1 million, a little over $1 million, it's not so bad. So again, it comes to, it comes back to timing. We don't want to do things too early, but we need to know what our options are in the future. So I think this is one of those that, we still have some internal discussion. Are we comfortable with the numbers that they submitted? How far do we need to carry this? There is a benefit to the base. Are there opportunities there? And then there's even been some internal discussion about, could we do a smaller portion of our system? And, those are all things that we still have to consider. And again, we don't want to rule out any alternatives because in the future, we're going to be faced with the challenge of how do we grow our wastewater system and how do we meet demand? And so we're still moving forward, but it's very, we're still really in planning. I don't see this going to design anytime soon.
Since you have Holiday City up there and they contribute to that, what's the status of that?
They did an internal inflow and infiltration study for their sewer system. Their sewer system is private. We were seeing during high rainfall events, large spikes in our wastewater system in that area. And they did an internal study. They claimed that they removed, do you remember? It was a significant amount that, they had a private engineer do it. And he submitted a report, and I apologize, I don't remember the number that they said they reduced. But we have not been back with our flow monitors to verify what we're seeing.
So you don't have anything like from the, not from Dorian, but from that thunderstorm 3 days after Dorian that basically was worse than Dorian was?
That was, deluge comes to mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
We saw spikes in our entire system during that. I don't know that, we haven't pulled that information for Holiday City. One of the things that we have realized is we can, through our mission control system, which is where we monitor our lift stations, it's not accurate when it comes to the amount of flow going through the station. And the reason is because it's based on the runtime of the pumps. So it's just calculating how long does that pump run? And then you have to use this, it was designed to pump 500 gallons a minute. Well, in some cases, the pump may be pumping much less than that because of wear and tear on the impellers, or, it's just not as efficient anymore. So we found that that's not a good way to judge the amount of flow. What we can see, though, is the spikes. So we look at it as, the pump's running constantly, and then all of a sudden we see this large, it runs for a lot longer, or both pumps run, or we have high wet wells. So we are still able to use that data, but I haven't had the time to go back and check. So we do have our flow monitors currently out in the Decatur Basin, so that's why we haven't redeployed them. And every time we deploy them, there's consumable components of the pumps, and it costs us a couple of $1,000s to put the pumps back out. So we just, it's one of those that we haven't gotten to yet. And sadly, the owner that had done all that work no longer is involved with Holiday City. They've sold it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think that's pretty much all we have for the capital improvement plan update for water and sewer projects.
Does the committee have any,
I have a question.
okay,
My concern, and I brought it up many times, is running Western Boulevard on across the river.
Yes.
Are you even doing any study on that, or
That
coming up with
is,
design, or? I know we're gonna have to have a pump station like the main one is now.
yeah,
what
so
that is.
this is actually part of that overall larger project.
Okay,
So the project's designed, the project's permitted, all with the exception of the DOT permit that says we can work in there right away, which for this section, we don't even have to have right now anyway. But that's the only permit that's outstanding. We've actually acquired all of the easements. So literally it comes down to timing. When, we don't want to start too early, but we're about ready to go if we need to.
How long do you think it's gonna take for the stage to get it across the river?
To get, are you talking about just construction wise? If we constructed this all as one project, it would be a multi-year project. My guess, based on what we did with the raw water transmission mains, because it's the gravity sewer is a little more difficult, but it's similar construction. I would bet it would be an 18-month construction period. And then we would be coming back behind that to, do the finish grading, replacing lawns and streets and those kind of things. But to get the pipe in the ground and get the station built, I think it's at least an 18-month period.
Will it go under the river?
Yes, it'll be a directional drill under the river, and it's a long directional drill. It will be interesting to see.
You've got some wetlands there.
Yes, the longest one I've done is 1,100 feet, and this would beat that.
Oh, yeah.
This one's
It'll beat
close
it
to
away.
25.
Oh, so that more than doubles it.
Yeah.
It's gonna beat it a lot.
Yes.
And it'll actually be 2 pipes that go underneath the river.
Yes.
2 24-inch.
Okay.
Much like we did with the original construction. So it gives you a redundancy if something happens to one of them under the river, you still at least have one 24-inch.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
that's it for me.
Okay, hearing none, on to old business.
I do not have anything for old business.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
From the August meeting, the water shortage plan, the
Yes.
public comment period, how'd that go?
It went well. We only had one comment, and it was actually a pretty good comment. We didn't incorporate it in at this point, but we will come back and look at it for the update. But the person that made the comment actually read the plan, and in one of the higher emergency, I think it was in the emergency, it basically says that you'll hand wash the dishes. And her comment was, I just bought a dishwasher at Lowe's or Home Depot that says it actually uses less water than hand washing dishes. So that was an interesting comment that when that was originally developed, we probably didn't put a lot of thought into the HE appliances that we have now. So, and then it was approved by city council, submitted, the resolutions were approved, and that's been submitted to the state for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have anything for old business? That is new business.
Ready for a,
Go right ahead.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
We're not there yet.
You've got the next meeting.
No, I've got new business.
Oh, we done new business.
No, I asked if you had new business and you said yes.
No, I don't have any. That was the new business.
Yes, Wally.
I'll add one thing under new business. If you look at the grease reports, because I know you pay attention to those, one of the things we are reorganizing utilities maintenance. Percy's actually been promoted. I'm not sure if we shared that with you at the last meeting. He's actually he's the line supervisor now, so he is the one that is responsible for water and sewer repairs. So he will be transitioning into that role, and as part of that, shifting some of his responsibilities as it comes to grease traps. So I think those are actually going to shift over to TJ, who's also in utilities maintenance, but in a different section of utilities maintenance. But as that transition is happening, there may be some fluctuations. We're still making sure we get the paperwork, but the inspections, we may be behind on inspections for a couple of months while we get everything situated.
Yeah, I saw that the paperwork violations dropped to 0 for July and August. I thought, wow, everybody got really good all of a sudden. So
Yeah,
that's part of the switchover?
Yeah, that's part of the switchover.
Okay.
So we'll get there. It's, again, we're not adding any new staff, so this is a shift in responsibilities and making sure that, we're trying not to drop anything, but, we just wanted you to be aware because I do know you pay attention to this, that's part of it. Part of the shift in responsibilities and training.
Your superintendent with child last night.
Oh, yes, and congratulations to Anthony Futrell. He and his wife Shannon, who was also a city employee. She's now with the state, but they had a new baby boy yesterday. So
Great.
congratulations to him.
Hope
That's
all
why he's not here tonight.
are doing well.
They are.
Very
They
good.
are.
So you also mentioned water service leaks, hydrant repairs, cleanouts, 3 cave-ins. So it has the wacky weather with 112 inches of rain last year and our drought this year played havoc. on the lines.
Service leaks are killing us.
I can
We,
imagine.
Anthony, the main repairs and service leaks, for some reason, for the last month or two have been off the chart. We are unsure of why. It could be some of the ground saturation and then it all dries up and you have things that are shrinking or compacting and busting things loose. But Anthony has, we normally have 8 to 10 and, we're in the 20s, almost 30 here. So it's been a challenge. We're not sure what's going on.
But people should be on the lookout for soggy spots in their yard.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll get to them, but unfortunately, we don't get to them immediately.
Taking a walk, I did see a sign, you had one of those little placard signs up
Yes.
saying, scheduled for service repair. So, yes.
Yes, we only have a few of those.
Did you see that on College?
No, I saw that,
Oh, the little Amtrak station.
up on Pine Valley, I believe, somewhere around that area.
Yes, so that's a fairly new program we've gotten, everybody's pretty used to the cone. We were trying to come up with something that's a little bit better than a cone. That says, hey, at least we know about it. So, I don't know, if you think that worked well, we may can move forward with a few more of those.
It might have cut down on some calls too, because if
That's what we were
then,
hoping.
if people realize, okay, I don't have to call them about it, they already know.
Well, and unfortunately, it's hard to explain to people that, when we have leaks, that we haven't forgot about them. And yes, I realize that it's been leaking a week, but a lot of times, we always have 10 or 12. We'll fix 10 or 12 and 10 or 12 are right behind it.
And if you have a really big leak, the big leak
And
has
if
to
we-
come first.
That's exactly right. If we have a large leak, like the one we had on University, that comes first. So there is or the one that I showed you the video of the previous meeting. Those, we prioritize those first. So we are trying to work on making sure that we stay in touch with people and let them know that we will be getting by to the repair them. We haven't forgotten about them. We have them in a queue. We keep them digitally now and we get reminders about them. So we haven't forgotten and we will get to it. But unfortunately, we've got so many out there that it's just a challenge and we have a limited staff.
Okay. Thank you very much. So now, James, do I have anybody willing to make a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second, ladies?
I'll second it.
We already
We are adjourned.
had the motion on.